Hi, I'm Shawn Kim.
And I'm Matt Pat. And today we're reviewing Unit 3.
Unit 3 lasted from 600 to 1450 CE.
Are you wearing a Coors Light t-shirt?
Yes, I am. Do you have a problem with it?
It's supposed to be professional. Can we have class here? See, classy ties, tie clips.
The things I do for social science.
Took you long enough. Alright, so, we do know that we're not John Green. But he's pretty cool. I'm pretty cool. I sometimes wear plastic frame glasses. He sometimes wears plastic frame glasses. I can talk really fast. He talks fast in his videos. I mean, there's so many similarities.
Just roll to the intro. As I was saying before, Unit 3 lasted from 600 to 1450 CE, and is an important part of history as it is when big trade networks were revived and interlinked the world, new governments replaced the classical empires, and Islam rose to prominence.
Also, we can't forget about, wait for it, the Mongols! Unit 3 is also known as the post-classical era because many of the classical empires such as the Han Dynasty in China and the Roman Empire had fallen. In the place of the Roman Empire that had fallen in Western Europe was a disorganized every-man-for-himself situation where feudalism took root.
The Catholic Church unified the fragmented European states, and it eventually provided social order and political stability. The Pope served not only as the religious leader, but also as the de facto political head of Europe.
In fact, the Catholic Church offered women opportunities for leadership by creating communities of nuns. This fact, and other accessibilities, contributed to most Western Europeans flocking to the Church to seek comfort in the faith and in the Church. On the local level, secular government did exist in the form of feudalism, which consisted of wealthy landowners, or lords, their poor serfs who were slaves tied to the land, and knights in shining armor.
After a while, political power shifted back into secular hands when Charles Martel, a Christian leader of the Germanic Franks, defeated a Muslim army that had entered France from Spain in the Battle of Tours.
Tours.
His grandson, the famous Charlemagne, united much of modern France, Germany, and northern Italy into a Holy Roman Empire, because it was neither holy nor Roman.
Charlemagne's empire gradually broke down after his death, but led to the formation of kingdoms in England and France. This began a power struggle between the church and state that would continue on for many more centuries and into the next few units.
While Western Europe was in political unrest, Eastern Europe was flourishing under the Eastern Roman Empire, more commonly known as the Byzantine Empire. At its height, it covered Eastern Europe and almost all of North Africa.
One of the most memorable leaders of the Byzantine Empire was Emperor Justinian, who established a unified legal code throughout his empire, and it was under his reign the Byzantine Empire experienced his golden age as he sought to reunite the Roman Empire. Due to the proximity of the rising Muslim states, the Byzantine Empire was gradually weakened by Muslim forces from the Ottoman Empire, which eventually took over the Byzantine Empire in 1453 when they took Constantinople.
This leads us to our next topic of Islam. Islam was developed in Southwest Asia in the early 7th century CE by Muhammad, a merchant who claimed he had received visions from Allah, and whose teachings were recorded in the Quran, or the Muslim religious text.
Islam is a monotheistic religion, so thus includes the belief in one God, or in Arabic, Allah. Muhammad was seen as God's final prophet. One of the most prominent parts of Islam are the 5 pillars. Among other obligatory acts such as fasting, almsgiving, and claiming there is one God, the 5 pillars require that each follower must take a religious pilgrimage, a Hajj, to Mecca, at least once in his or her lifetime. Ibn Battuta's greatest travels began on his single pilgrimage to the holy city. Muslims also pray 5 times throughout the day and pay a tax known as the zakat to help the poor.
It is important to note that while Jesus claimed to be the savior of Christianity, Muhammad did not claim to be a savior. In fact, he preached he was a prophet, which was a major difference between Islam and Christianity. Muhammad also was a political leader, and Islam had an instant effect on the polytheistic nomadic herders of the Arabian Peninsula, and united them under one common ideology, whether they liked it or not. The zakat, the tax mentioned earlier, was much higher for non-believers. This economic factor led many to convert to Islam.
Eventually, Dar al-Islam, the Muslim political and social influence of Islamic states, stretched from Spain across North Africa and into modern India and Pakistan. Muhammad did not declare a successor, so the faith fractured into regional caliphates.
Now, if you guys recall, a caliphate is an Islamic state led by a caliph,
Ali!
which literally means a successor to Muhammad. The Umayyad Caliphate originated in Damascus, Syria, but constant struggles against the Abbasid Caliphate influenced the Umayyad Caliphate to set up a dynasty in Cordoba, Spain. While the rest of Western Europe struggled to recover from the collapse of the Roman Empire, Spain was wealthy and stable due to the Arab technology and trade and the firm, steady rule of the Umayyad Caliphate up until the 11th century.
The aforementioned Abbasid Caliphate was centered in Baghdad and stretched, at its peak, from modern Turkey into Central Asia and North Africa. It was under the Abbasid Caliphate the Islamic Golden Age occurred. Scholars, poets, scientists, and artists made advances in astronomy, medicine, and mathematics, which we all love today. Well, maybe not all of us, but this Golden Age would not have been possible without the massive immigrations of people, educated peoples, into Baghdad. As a result, Baghdad was one of the world's most diverse and cosmopolitan cities, filled with Arabs, Persians, Europeans, Turks, South Asians, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, and Muslims. It was the first city to reach 1 million in population. This allowed for a great cultural exchange, and examples of this are Persians and Seljuks, Turkish Muslims, serving in the government, and Persian art, language, and literature being the most prominent among the Abbasids. As all empires go, the Abbasids faced internal and external struggles, of mostly peasant revolts in the country, and were eventually destroyed by, wait for it, the Mongols!
The Delhi Sultanates were a series of Muslim Turk dynasties who settled in the northern portion of India, mainly Delhi. The Delhi Sultanates weren't able to convert many people to Islam, at its peak 25% of the population, because of the strong grip Hinduism had on India. However, the Delhi Sultanates were able to block the invasions of the wait for it,
The Mongols!
It's also important to note that Islam wasn't only spread by empires, but also saw great expansions via trade, especially in the Indian Ocean, where merchants and missionaries spread the faith from East Africa to Southeast Asia.
Are we talking about the Mongols yet?
No, Matt. Just talk about the Crusades.
The agony of waiting! The Crusades were a series of Muslim-Christian battles over control of Southwest Asia on the Mediterranean coast, beginning in the late 11th century and lasted for about 200 years. Although there were some religious causes of the Crusades, such as taking back the Holy Land and wanting to spread Christianity, a driving cause of the Crusades was fear. The Christian forces of Europe felt the growing presence of Islam, and the fear that if the Byzantine capital, Constantinople, came under Muslim control, they would be cut off mostly from the trade.
Christians also wanted to re-establish their grip on Southwest Asia, which they felt had been pushed aside by the Muslim struggle, or jihad, for the faith. The Westerners of Europe sent both trained forces such as knights and private armies, and untrained forces such as monks, lay people, and children.
Why would they send children?
Why did it take so long to invent the saddle?
I don't know. It's unanswerable questions.
The Europeans were only able to gain small territories along the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, and they paid a heavy price for it in terms of lives and money initially. However, the economic results for the Europeans were very good. Products entered Western Europe as never before, and spices, foods, silk, cotton, and many other products were in influx.
This new amount of goods caused a higher demand of trade of these goods, which led to an increase in the number of towns along the trade routes in the east, and an increase in wealth of the rich in the west, which led to even more trade. Cities along the land-sea trade routes increased in the number and importance. Some of the most important Afro-Eurasian trading cities were Dijon, Timbuktu, and Gao in West Africa, Byzantium and Novgorod in Europe, and Baghdad in Southwest Asia. There were also numerous important trade cities in East Asia, such as Dongguan, Shenyang, and Guangzhou.
The Crusades also had many advancements for the Europeans. They rediscovered Roman and Greek literature and culture that Muslim scholars had maintained for centuries. The math, philosophies, and science of those classical civilizations began an intellectual revival in the 14th and 15th centuries called the Renaissance. The Renaissance placed Western Europe back on the path to success and started Western Europe having immense power in the 19th century. A prominent city that rose during the Renaissance was Venice, which also produced one of the greatest explorers, Marco Polo.
And now we're going to turn it over to Kenneth. Take it away, MC Kennedy. Break it down.
1350 to 1600, remember those dates, cause that's the Renaissance where everything changed. Don't you know Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci making progress in art and science, changing the course of history. The Greeks and the Romans had these great ideas to resurface in this rebirth, and it's gonna be the inspiration of society's best creation that had a strong relation to reality. Those artists began to use perspective and values, so their art had a strong sense of actuality. So frankly, those artists rebelled intellectually. I could apply this to the sciences, where many scientists made discoveries and kept finding things. So here's the Renaissance, yeah, in one verse. So hope you enjoyed this rap. Peace out. Word. Oh! After the fall of the classical Chinese Empire of the Han Dynasty, regional rulers took over the power in China. The next family that reunited China was the Sui, followed immediately by the economic golden ages of the Tang and Song dynasties. The Sui dynasty did not last long, about 40 years, but its policies did. The Grand Canal and Great Wall were revived while Confucian civil service exams were instituted and Buddhism increased in popularity. The Tang dynasty followed the Sui and was the golden age of Chinese culture, economics, and scientific achievement. Construction of the Great Wall and the Confucian civil service exams continued. The Tang also rejected Buddhism and restored Confucianism. Tang technology was compromised of printing, gunpowder, medicine, the compass, and shipbuilding, all of which were extremely advanced for the time period. Eventually, the Golden Age all came to an end when floods, famine, pirates, and bandits created great chaos in the empire. The Song dynasty included the development of Neo-Confucianism, which is a Salvationist version of Confucianism, with influences from Buddhism and Taoism. The restoration of Confucian morals and its male-first values was reduction in the status of women evidenced by foot binding. During China's revival, it had a strong influence and Chinese culture was spread everywhere. This was known as sinification. China's control over Korea influenced Koreans to borrow some aspects of Chinese cultures and adapt Chinese Confucianism and Buddhism. Sinification in Japan occurred voluntarily because Japan was never conquered by China. The success of China under the Tang dynasty motivated Japanese emperors to adopt elements of Chinese civilization, Confucianism and Buddhism, and China's bureaucratic systems also found its way into Japan. Later on, the Chinese took over Vietnam, but also had temporary success because the Vietnamese revolted frequently and often, and Vietnamese women did not accept patriarchy. The influence of the Song dynasty was later ended by, wait for it,
The Mongols! Finally, we talk about the Mongols!
Matt.
Yes?
The Mongols were the most unstoppable force in history and were huge agents of change. The Mongols were originally pastoralists, also known as nomadic herders. Some key things you have to know about the Mongols are that they controlled the largest empire the world has ever seen. They allowed freedom of religion in the areas they conquered, and the Mughal Empire of South Asia took its name from the Mongols.
In the early 13th century, the Mongols swept south into China and ended the Song dynasty, after which Kublai Khan took power and founded the Yuan dynasty. The combination of immense speed and extremely skilled archery allowed the Mongols to launch merciless and successful military campaigns all over Eurasia. All of this would not have been possible without Genghis Khan, also known as Chinggis Khan.
Genghis Khan was responsible for uniting all of the nomadic tribes of Mongolia. This unification of Central Asia led to the downfall of many political states, such as the Abbasid Caliphate and the remnants of the Persian Empire.
Despite this bloodshed, during their short time in power, the Mongols resecured and reinvigorated trade on the Silk Roads, and a time of peace occurred because of the Mongols' ability to use local leaders to administer local people and therefore police the state. This time is now known as the Pax Mongolica, or the Mongolian Peace.
The Mongols, however, did have negative impacts, such as bringing about the Black Plague. This terrible disease swept Europe in the 13th century and decimated towns and cities, and also led to a massive de-urbanization and killed 1/3 of Europe's population. Now, back to Kenneth for a special report.
Meanwhile, in the Americas, there were three major political entities called the Incas, the Aztecs, and the Mayans. If you guys remember, the Aztecs in the massive city of Tenochtitlan and the Chinampa system, which consisted of large floating islands of crops. The Incas had a meta system, which coerced public works projects, which is significant because this is the first time period when coerced labor started to be utilized heavily. In Africa, there were Sudanic states, which were southwest of the Sahara, and Muslim kingdoms of Ghana, Songhai, and Mali, all of which exported salt, gold, and animal skins. As part of the vast Afro-Eurasia trade network, these Sudanic states developed major trade and education centers like Jin, Gao, and most famous of all, Timbuktu. In Ethiopia, coffee was a major trade export. Christians was a major presence, and the kingdom grew to have an unshakable faith in that religion.
In the end, despite the so-called Dark Ages and the Black Plague, throughout the world this time period was full of technological innovations, from the compass to unique farming equipment like horseshoes and better plows.
We also see the invention of stirrups, which we all know is important.
In this unit, we see the roots of globalization forming in the new interconnection of peoples through the Silk Roads, new unification beneath the short-lived and giant Mongol empires and the long-lived Muslim empires, which survived in the modern era in the form of the Ottoman Empire. So this is all we have for today.
Thanks for watching.
And now we turn it over to Jen Ko, and good luck on your AP exam.